Century News. We're going to bring you a special on Iran. Stay tuned. Iran was neutral during World War I, except Persian forces were affected by the rivalry between Allied powers and Central powers. The British occupied much of western Iran, but not fully withdrawn until 1921. It was promised independence, but it wasn't given to them until after the war. Okay. After the war, Britain was the dominant influence in Tehran, an agreement under which Britain would provide Iran with a loan and with advices to the army. Officer Reza Khan marched into Tehran and seized power. Iran had its first national parliament. Reza Khan, Prime Minister of Iran, became the Shah, which is emperor. He was a dictator, so he ruled in a dictatorship. The nationalism, referring Persian illusions to the challenges of Western powers.
Okay, go.
Things were rough. And now, the independence of Iran. Iran was always its own country, but it was always influenced by other countries, like Russia, the Soviet, and they were always in control of the communications and economy of Iran. And when Shah came to power, he became a dictator and another Shah, even though that was contradictory since he wanted democracy. And eventually this led to the Iranians to revolt against Shah.
Some people say that his rise of power was good because he played a role in modernizing the forces in Iran. Others say that he was mostly a tyrant in his rule and failed in modernizing Iran's peasants' population.
Changes. One of the cornerstones of the Iranian economy was the construction of the Trans-Iranian Railroad, linking the Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea. The project was entirely financed by indigenous capital, through taxes on sugar and tea. There were initiated reforms on areas of education and law, which used to be the domain of the clergy. But now the country's main goal was to build a secular state. Compulsory education was decreed and hundreds of schools were built. There were laws requiring Iranians to wear more Western clothing and required European hats. Women had to get rid of the chador. Throughout the time period, women got more rights. For example, the minimum age for women was increased to 15 years old to get married. And the right to divorce could be included in the marriage contract. Laws protecting the family were approved. Okay. Attempts to increase nationalism were made. It meant for the people to love the kingdom of Iran. Nationalism promoted the feeling of belonging to a modern nation with 12 centuries of history. There were campaigns to raise literacy levels, rapid growth of urbanization and communication, the emergence of a middle class and educated urban group. Thank you.
Yeah, ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today on 20th Century News, we will interview Reza Khan, Prime Minister and Shah of Iran. Everybody please welcome Mr. Reza Khan.
Hello, thank you to be here.
For all those who don't know, Mr. Khan was an Iranian military officer. So tell us, Mr. Khan, what made you join the military?
When my father died and my mother told me to enlist, I was unsure at first, but then later I got convinced and I agreed to join the army.
What made you different or better than the other privates?
Well, I expressed a strong will and superior intelligence over the others and leadership quality, and I was by the chiefs.
When did you know that Iran needed change?
I knew Iran needed a change because after I saw that it was being ruled by all these foreign powers like the Soviet Union and Great Britain, as well as Ahmad Shah, the last Shah of the Kahar dynasty, who was incompetent and his cabinet was weak. That's when I decided I would try to turn Iran into a republic and strengthen its government.
How did you become Shah?
When Ahmed Shah became ill and traveled to Europe for treatment and then returned to Iran, the Mahals overthrew the absent Shah and elected me as the new Shah.
What are some changes that you made that help shape Iran today?
I have made many changes, like I built a trans-Iranian railway that had service to all major cities, emancipated women and had them rid of their wheels. I built roads, schools, hospitals, and opened the first university of Iran. Also, I took control of the country's finances and communications, which were under the foreign rules.
What was the purpose of all these reforms?
I wanted to cut back the foreign influence of the other governments and the economy, as well as I wanted to democratize.
Lastly, Mr. Khan, how did you feel when you had to leave all your work in the hands of your son Mohammed Khan because the Soviet Union and Great Britain were afraid that you would partner up with the Nazis?
I knew it would be safe in the hands of my son and that he would continue the reforms that I used. However, I was disappointed that Britain and Russians became allies because I wanted them to turn against each other, and the thought that they believed I would work with the Nazis was just unreal and displeasing.
That's all the time we have today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Khan, for being here.
Professional, you know.
Thanks for tuning in